Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? Okay, I hope so. It's going to be our first class of spring 2021 quarter. Okay, so hopefully we're excited to learn about world civilization, starting from the beginning as much as we possibly can, since nobody's still around from the beginning time. But we do have always improved history in calculating these things and finding new information all the time. So I took a quarter off, I guess, last quarter, the winter quarter. So I'm back, and hopefully I remember exactly all the little steps that I have to do. So please be patient with that, and hopefully we're excited about learning again about world civilizations. And every, what should I say, every era should have its own kind of interesting information for us. Okay. And I hope that's how you feel about it. That's how I feel about it. Right. Right. Okay. All right. So again, let me watch my steps here. And this first week, again, this will be Monday, April 5th. So I'm going to try to go to the earliest part of human history. Okay. All right. So we go here to the material. Okay. Oh, let me minimize myself first. We only need to, I'm trying to minimize, not maximize. Come on, machine. There we go. Let me bring this down. Okay. So again, minimize, there we go. So slideshow from the beginning, world civilizations, and that means everybody from everywhere. Okay. Okay. Week 1, again, April the 5th, 2021. Okay. So like I said, this is the title, the earliest human civilizations and societies, right? Okay. History in the strictest sense means a methodical study of evidence in the human past. Methodical means very concentrated, very step by step. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. No skipping. So we study that evidence in the human past in whatever form it exists, which means whatever information in whatever style we can gather. And this can be in written words or the spoken word, for example. A lot of the first societies did not have written language. So things were passed on for hundreds of years by just the spoken word. And some of them still retain these histories. So whatever historians can get, they will get and use. Okay. Here's a new line in our new updated kind of books that we have now. But most people don't use history in the strict sense. They define the word history more simply as whatever happened in the past to human beings, which of course is a bigger proposition or situation. Humans, however, define, so however you define human beings with different terms, and we will learn a few here, have inhabited, or that means lived, in the earth for a long time. Before the invention of writing, so like I told you before, spoken histories were the majority of the early, and have continued for a lot of societies to this day, accounts of their history. So like I said, the invention of writing, an extremely lengthy period of time elapsed or happened during which human beings gradually mastered the various abilities of mind and body that together enabled their survival as a species on Earth. So that means there was a lot of skills, hunting and gathering and planting crops and saving food and finding shelter. It's a lot of skills that they had to master to survive. And if you didn't master these, you probably wouldn't survive. And some early species of humans did not survive. You know about the Cro-Magnon man, they did not survive. Okay. So this period of human existence lasted for several million years. That's why I said it's very difficult to get the complete, accurate history. I mean, look how far back that goes. Wow. During this time, humans slowly and sporadically, which means kind of hit and miss, they did some here, they didn't succeed over there. They evolved from beings who were only slightly different from their genetic cousins among the great apes. That's what a lot of anthropologists believes now. I mean, if you study the chromosomes, I think it's chimpanzees and some orangutans, that we almost have the same chromosomes. There's only a few separating us. And that who are only slightly different from their genetic cousins, right, among the great apes. So those chimpanzees and orangutans are involved in the great ape species. To creatures who have proven marvelously resourceful and adaptable. Okay. What they're trying to say there is you really don't see chimpanzees or orangutans using a lot of tools, right? They survive, but they don't use a lot of tools to build things like we do. Tens of thousands of years before the beginning of recorded history, they populated, these early human species, the entire Earth except Antarctica. And I'm guessing that's because it was too cold to survive. And they didn't have the skills yet that the later Eskimo people were able to develop to survive. And the people eventually developed religions, see, made tools, even created art forms. That's another thing. You don't really see any of the ape family creating art. They don't say, here's a painting, right? So they feel that that's a skill that we have above these folks, even though we have almost all the same kind of chromosomes. Mastered agriculture, that's another thing they haven't done. You don't see great apes. You know, here's my cabbage patch, or these are my banana trees. That they don't do that. And demonstrated many other talents and achievements. The development of human creatures called Homo sapiens, our first term we're introducing you to about early humans, from their earliest origins has become one of the most controversial, which means people argue and don't agree about this all the time, of modern sciences. Every year, it seems, new evidence comes to light, which means is discovered. That's what comes to light means. That purports means like, that's the statement that you make. This is what we believe. To extend the age of the genus Homo, which means the original human, farther back in time. So every time we learn more things, it's like, uh-oh, I think we started even earlier. And with a more tangled necessary. So I don't know if you've heard the word tangled before. I think there was a Disney cartoon movie maybe 10 years ago, or a little bit more, called Tangled. So some ladies might know about this. This is usually used in the hair industry, where when women's hair gets like almost these little knots together, they can't push the comb through their hair. They describe it as the hair being tangled. So what they mean here is that instead of, like, we say, okay, there's this one line, let's say it's I don't know, the brown line, right, of humans. And then it gets more tangled and you find out, oh no, they actually mixed with the black line. Okay, now we know everything. No. Then we find out the black line was tangled with the white line before that. So we find a lot more connections between humans as we study and learn. It's not quite as simple as just one line coming from one area. They're kind of mixed. Okay, whereas until recently, it was assumed that Homo evolved through a process called natural selection along a clear-cut and single stem line. So like I said, just one line. If you hadn't heard natural selection, this is a term that was invented by Darwin, the Western fellow that talked about different human and animal species and what have you. And his big claim was talking about natural selection, that meant only that the strongest of species, we don't have to be talking about humans now, but that any species were the only ones that survived. The weaker ones, the ones that couldn't adapt, the ones that weren't that strong, he said, hey, they just died and drifted away. But the stronger ones, they were naturally selected, and that's why they succeeded. And that's why we have the old term, I don't know if you've heard it, only the strong survive. So, yeah. But it is now generally accepted that human beings' family tree is more like a bush with many branches. Again, the intermixing, the tangling, of which almost all have died. Wow. So even more have died than we thought. So let me move over to the right and show you this thing here again, showing you timelines that are just so long, right? 200,000 to 100,000 BCE, before Christ, Homo sapiens appeared. So that's the first kind of humans that appeared that were actually much more ape-like. Their bodies were actually bigger and stronger than what we have now, but people are saying their mentality wasn't as good, right? And again, different lines. So that's why some folks passed away and some intermingled and Homo sapiens developed. So here we go. 75,000 to 15,000 BCE, humans migrate, which means they leave out of Africa. Now people are saying that it used to be that people thought everybody came from China. Now they're saying it's Africa, the original humans. So they migrated out of Africa and populate the major continents. And a lot of the continents were connected at the time, so it made that much easier. It's kind of impossible. It's like me walking down to Santa Monica Beach and say, well, I want to walk over to Japan. And I said, well, you got to go through the Pacific Ocean now. But other areas, like Australia, was connected to, other major continents. And that's why it made it easier. We had even the frozen one, which is called the Bering Strait, which supposedly people walk through Asia and what is now Russia over to North America, right? But when that melted, that stopped. Okay. And then we have 10,000 BCE, Neolithic age commences, which means starts. And I will talk about the Neolithic age and the certain aspects that are important about it. And then 7000 BCE, Bronze Age begins. So bronze is a metal that you have to create by heating things. And then this is the beginning of all our, I would say iron, but this is bronze first. Instruments, weapons, sophisticated, weapons compared to just a stick, right? A sharpened stick, and cooking utensils and stronger homes, and you name it. But that's a skill. Again, the great apes do not make bronze. They do not make any metals. And this really helped the earliest human societies reach another level of civilization, right? And then we go to 3500 BCE, agrarian, which means farming, civilizations in Mesopotamia, Egypt. So this is the appearance of humans now doing farming. So originally the first humans, or what we use, cave people, right? They just hunted. Now, if they found something, a bush with some kind of berries on it or some nuts growing, that's one thing, but they weren't farming yet, right? Not until this time. So that's a difference between finding, like, again, the basic animals, or you say, I know how to get a seed, I know how to make fertilizer, I'm going to grow vegetables, I'm going to grow fruits. That's a different skill level and different area of your mentality. So at this time, farming began, and they're pinpointing it to Mesopotamia, Egypt. And then here, 1500, now we start the Iron Age, which was a little more sophisticated than just the bronze, and even more things, instruments of war, chariots, you name it, different kinds of things just barely started being manufactured. Okay. So I think I've got a couple of questions here. Let me see if like I said, I took a quarter off. Let me see if I remember how to do this. So funny. Okay. So I used to have a technique here, but we shall see. Okay, so let me go to the whiteboard. And I can move myself again. I was making sure you guys could read that. So I got to find my pencil. Okay. So here's my first question from that page. Question 1. Oops, let me get my spelling correct here. Okay, so question 1, let me see if I can extend this. Even that looks okay. That's all right for there. Before recorded history, again, before it was actually written down and books were made or scrolls, what are some things that humans did? So again, I'm not asking you like, oh, what were their hobbies, or did they go to the movies or the library? No, this should be actually stated, what were some things that they developed, right? And I went over that. So just, list as many as you can. So again, if I've had you before, if you're a new student to my class, this is a good practice for you, because on the test, let's say I put this, and there's probably a good chance that this will be on the midterm, okay? This question. So when or should I say if, who knows, I put this on the midterm, again, I'm asking for some things. So if you're a student and you put one thing, you're like, I'm tired, I only want to answer one thing. And I think they list four, right? Okay, that's fine. You've answered the question basically. But since it is some, I'm asking for more than one. So if another student puts two, then this student I'll give more points than you. And if another student puts three, as long as they're correct, right? They don't put, oh, hamburgers and hot dogs. They put a correct answer. Then the person who puts three will get more points. So it's a practice for you. Okay. All right. All right. I think in this first one, I only have two questions. Okay. All right. Okay. Two. What is the scientific term for humans that we learned? Okay. I just stated it. So let me give you a few minutes to answer those. Okay. Or at least write them down. You know, you can answer them later if you're, you know, tired or a little slow with the pencil. It's no problem. Hey, everybody doing okay? You want me to move on? We ready to do that? Okay, get the eraser. All right, I'll repeat these for your benefit. Before recorded history, what are some things that humans did? Again, I'm asking you, what things did they develop? That's the key, develop, right? Okay. Two, what is the scientific term for humans that we learned? Okay. And it just popped up there in big, bold, black letters. Okay. Good deal. Right. Eraser one, eraser two. Good deal. All right. Stop the share. We're back here. Back to the material. Good deal. Let me drop this down. Okay, so we're going to have to move on. We stopped here like a bush with many branches, which almost all have died. Okay. Okay, now, like I said, we're going to get into the Paleolithic. Okay. Paleolithic age or era. We call it an era. Okay. The lengthy period extending from the appearance, and lengthy means a long time, from the appearance of the first tool-making hominids, there's another term for you, hominids, which we're concentrating on the Homo sapien one, so don't worry, to about 10,000 BCE is known as the Paleolithic Age or Old Stone Age. So called because tools were made of stone and other natural materials and were still quite crude. Paleo equals old, lithos equals stone. So again, before we got into the bronze and later the iron, people used stones basically for hunting, right? Big animals that they could possibly be killed from if they did not have something strong, right? By the end of the Paleolithic, humans inhabited or lived in all the continents except Antarctica. Again, I guess they wanted to say that, hey, it was too cold, right? It's a frozen wasteland. Late Paleolithic peoples were hunters and foragers, which means obviously they hunted for food, and foraging means kind of like looking for nuts, berries, tubers, which are like radishes that are under the ground. So they're scrounging around looking for these things. And basically, like, we keep on going back to the apes since they say we're related. That's what they do now. They look for nuts and berries and things like that. I think supposedly the gorillas are vegetarians, right? So they don't even hunt. So life was not easy, and famine was always near at hand. Famine is a high-level word for starvation, for starving. So that's why a lot of lions starved, because maybe they were not that good at hunting and gathering, or sadly, they lived in an area that didn't provide a lot of animals or vegetables, nuts, fruits. Maybe what if you were in the desert? What are you going to do? And if you don't think about trying to get out of there, maybe eventually you'll die quicker than you can escape. Okay. Paleolithic hunting and gathering was done in groups, and success depended more on organization and cooperation than on individual bravery or strength. So what they're saying here is, and this follows through, like, I don't know if any of you go deep sea diving, they always want you to go in a group of at least 3, right? I don't know if they brought it up to 4, but if you go by yourself, you have a very good chance of dying, either getting killed by maybe a shark, or just having complications with your own breathing apparatus, and there's no one to help you, right? So the same thing with here. You go out, you're trying to hunt a deer, and then some saber-toothed tigers come out of nowhere, and you're by yourself. Even if it's just one tiger, what are you going to do? But if you've got a group of people, 4, 5, 6 people, all with spears and stones, you have a much better chance of survival. And the more organized you are and have cooperation is much better than your individual or single bravery or strength. The family was the basic social unit, but it was normally an extended family, or what they call clan. That included uncles, aunts, in-laws, and other relatives, rather than the nuclear family, or what we call the modern family, mother, father, children. That is common today. A unit larger than the nuclear family was necessary for protection. Again, there you go. So as we say, strength in numbers. But the total number able to live and hunt together was probably quite small, no more than 40 or so. That sounds like a good group, though. Increase the safety. More people than that would have been difficult to sustain when hunting was poor or wild fruits and seeds were not plentiful. So what they're saying there is that if you had, let's say it was crazy, let's say you had 100 people, probably the food that you would find, or even if you killed a pretty good size animal, or let's say 2 deers, it wouldn't be enough to feed 100 people. But 40, might do the job there. So it had to be big, but not too big. Close family relations and interchange with other similar groups among the Paleolithic hunters were critical to their survival. The fact that we will see reflected or shown in many other locales in later history. The society and economy boxes throughout the book refer to this theme. So there's going to be some boxes on the side where I can illustrate some points on this, right? Like the first page, right? The last one we did where it actually gave us some time frames, right? Says, although, so I'm continuing up on the top, although conflicts frequently arose over hunting grounds, water, theft, or other problems. So that says maybe you're with your 40-person group in this cave, and then you go hunting, and then there's other people out there, and there's problems. Like they say, no, this is our hunting area, right? This is for us. So that could possibly cause a problem. So much open space capable of sustaining life was available, that the weaker units probably just moved on when they were confronted with force or threats. So what that means is, let's say you have a smaller group, let's say maybe 15, 20, and then you encounter the group with 40, and they're pretty tough, not friendly, don't want to share. So instead of fighting them, since you only have half of their numbers, you just moved on, and there was a lot of open space. No condos at the time, no shopping centers, so you can find other areas. Violence tempered and controlled by consensual authority was a constant factor and determining historical and prehistoric life. And what that says is, yes, let's say that group of 40 against a group of 20, a lot of them said, hey, we're going to beat your butt. We're going to use violence or kill you. And this was a constant factor in determining historical and prehistoric life. So maybe the group that moved on that only had 15 to 20, maybe they didn't survive in the new area, right? Or sometimes maybe the group was so nasty, the larger group, that maybe they just killed them anyway, right? Okay. Human development during the Paleolithic. During the Paleolithic, both the physical appearance of humans and their vital capacity to reason, plan, organize, make tools, and even, as we shall see, create art, changed considerably. And that's where you're not talking about canvases and art galleries. I'm sure everybody knows you're talking about the paintings on the inside of caves. That's art. Some of it is quite beautiful and quite detailed. Because of the extensive work of anthropologists since World War II, people that study different cultures and histories, we know that at least 17 varieties of hominid evolved during this time. Wow. Much evidence uncovered in East Africa and the Near East, as well as in Europe, indicates that all of these species of Homo came to eventually dead end, except for the Homo sapiens. And that's why we're concentrating on that. We are the ones who survived. Sometimes between 30,000 and 10,000 years ago, Homo sapiens seem to have become the sole or only species of Homo. Remember, we had hominids I introduced you to. So we got Homo sapiens, hominids to survive anywhere. So the other groups kind of disappeared. Okay. So it looks like I have a couple of questions for you here. All right. Right. Okay. So again, let me move here. Back to the whiteboard. Let me get my pencil. Okay, question 3. Okay, let me see if I can extend this just a little. Okay, there we go, a little more. That looks okay. Question 3, the first appearance, or when they first showed up, of humans until about 10,000 BCE is called what? And again, if you notice here, it's about, because we cannot pinpoint the exact year, day, time. It's in a wide framework, but more or less. Okay. So when did these first humans appear? About 10,000 BCE. And then we want to know is what is that era? Here's the key, or age called. And we only really talked about one, so that should be easy to find. Question 4. Okay, 4. Well, let me stretch it a bit. How many types of hominids evolved during this time? We just read this right now, so just give me the number. That's an easy one. Give me the number. So I'll give you a few minutes to write those down and hopefully answer them. Okay. When I finish, I want to go out. Okay. Okay, but I'm saying when I finish. Okay, let me hit that eraser. Repeating, the first appearance of humans until about 1030 BCE is called what? I'm asking the era or the age. That should give you the key. So that's gone. 4, how many types of hominids evolved during this time? I'm only asking for the number, and the hint is the number is not really a large number. All right. So let's try to go back to the material. All right, so we stopped here. Again, Homo sapiens seem to have become the sole species of Homo to survive anywhere. Moving on to our new age. The Neolithic age. Yes, indeed. Although the Paleolithic saw notable developments, which means important, that's why they were notable. It was in the Neolithic age, meaning new Stone Age, that humans made the breakthrough to more complex forms of civilization. Okay. As we saw, the Paleolithic groups were essentially nomadic, which means they wandered around. They didn't make a permanent home like people do now for, I have to pay a mortgage of 30 years, so I'm going to stay here. No, they moved around a lot. Modern group would be maybe someone like the Mongolians that actually live out in the countryside, not the city ones. Before about 800,000 years ago, they were scavengers, and scavengers means people that Just look for anything, anything. They don't sit there and say, well, I only like having a steak dinner, or I need to have sushi on the weekend. They looked for anything they could find to survive, right? Poor things. They were struggling big time. In the later Paleolithic, they depended more on hunting and gathering wild plants and animals for food. These hunter-gatherers had a mobile life, which means they wandered around, very mobile. They moved with the seasons. So if it got too cold in one area, they said, hey, we got to get out of here, right? So snowing. And the migration of animals, they hunted. So a lot of times, another key technique they developed is they followed the animals, since many animals move to different locations during certain times. Just like I know you've been in LA now for a while, California, we've got birds that migrate to Capistrano, which is almost San Diego. So if you know where deer or buffalo roam every year at a certain season, you can follow them and have an area to hunt them. So again, the migration of animals, they hunted, therefore they had no reason to attempt to settle down and every reason not to. Again, not like our modern group where, well, I got to get a house near my job and I'll have to pay a 30-year more. No, different lifestyle. But in the Neolithic, this situation changed. The gradual adoption, or mean the taking of agriculture, demanded more sedentary or situated where you stay someplace for a lengthy amount of time, or settled ways of life, because your crops, whatever they are, they don't grow in one day. Sometimes it takes a few months, and if you want to grow more, so you're starting to live a longer time in a certain area once you start doing agriculture. Moreover, even societies that lived primarily as nomadic pastoralists typically migrated within regions that included only those pasture lands and other resources they claimed against the claims of other societies. Again, if you lived in a desert area, you probably wanted to get out of there. You know what I mean? You're not going to have a lot of food that you're going to be able to grow or that is grown there naturally. So you migrate to better areas. The beginnings of humans' ability to grow or breed their food, which means breeding animals, used to be called the agriculture or Neolithic Revolution. Now we know that if this was a revolution, it was a very slow one. Most people took about 5 to 10 generations. Wow, 200 to 400 years. Long time to complete it. Gradually, gathering and hunting as the primary ways to acquire food gave way to livestock breeding. Livestock can be anything from cows, pigs, goats, and herding, and sowing and harvesting. Again, harvesting is harvesting your crops. Usually such domesticated ways of obtaining food continued to go hand in hand with hunting for a long, long time. Some members of the group would hunt, while others raised some form of grain from wild grasses, the usual form of agriculture or raised livestock, you know. So when plant and animal husbandry, which means you're, raising farm animals, become the primary ways of getting something to eat, the Neolithic Revolution was complete for that group. Throughout this book, we shall be watching traditional beliefs and lifestyles giving way, however grudgingly, that means, you know, they don't really want to, but they have to the challenges brought forth by changes in the natural or the man-made environments. The Neolithic Revolution was one of the vastest of such changes, okay? The scientific technology scientific technology, the boxes will provide a perspective. Again, what I'm talking about there is little figures on the side, you know, they will let you know. All right, so it looks like I'm going to have some more questions here. Okay, so whiteboard. Pencil's already there, yay. Question 5. Come on, pencil, work. There we go. Again, let me get the spelling correct. Question 5, which age did humans made the breakthrough to more complex of a civilization? Again, breaking away from the just only hunting and gathering or scavenging. So let me extend this. Next question. 6. What was the agricultural, which means farming, revolution? Let me have some details on that. So I'll give you a few to get those out of the way. All right. I think you've had enough time there. Get the eraser. All right, repeating, which age did humans, they made their breakthrough to a more complex civilization? We've only gone over a couple, so that should be easy to do. 6, what was the agricultural revolution? To describe about the farming, and you should be fine. I'm gonna make my marks here, okay. All right, let's go back to the material. Okay, again, we're in here talking about the science and technology boxes. You will see another one very soon. Make sure my stuff is up to date here. Right. Right, moving on. Where were the first food producing societies? For many years, researchers believed that agriculture must have emerged or come out of the first in a region of the Near East called the Levantine Corridor and spread gradually from there into Asia and Africa. According to this diffusion theory of cultural accomplishment, knowledge of new techniques spreads through human contacts as water might spread on blotting paper. So basically, what this means here is that, and this still happens to this day. Let's say one area, one continent develops these agrarian techniques. And just because people intermingle, people travel, people meet each other, knowledge is spread, kind of like what's spread on the internet today. So, and that being said, then all of a sudden, it's not, the techniques and abilities are not just in one area, okay? They are now in the new continent. How did that happen? How did they know? We had it first, but people talk and people get together. So that's what happens. Okay, but it is now known that 7000 BC, by that time, agriculture had developed in at least 7 separate areas, independent of outside influences. The Near East, Central American, South America, Northern China, Southern China and Southeast Asia, Northeast Africa, and West Africa. That was a mouthful. About the same time or slightly later, the first domesticated animals were being raised. And again, those are animals being raised specifically to be eaten, not that were caught and hunted down. About the same time or slightly later, the first domesticated animals are being raised, right? Don't forget that. So, like I said before, pigs, sheep, cattle, which means cows, goats, guinea fowl, which are kind of like hamsters, but wild hamsters, a little bit bigger, a little bit fatter. They're still eaten in Peru, if you didn't know that. And then dogs. You talk to present day Mexican people, they're very proud of eating what is known a dish called carne asada. It's very delicious. It's roasted cow meat or beef. And, they're like, hey, if you're Mexican, you eat this. It's always been with us. But unfortunately, no, the Spanish brought that. They went in the 1400s. So it's only 500 years ago. So I don't know if you didn't know, but I don't know about a big source, but it was a source of protein for the Aztec Indians was Chihuahua meat or Chihuahua dogs. So that's why they say dogs here in the writing. And then turkeys for food. And work goes back at least as far as 4000 BCE. The horse and the donkey come considerably later, as we shall see. Worldview map 1.2 shows where some common plant and animal species were first cultivated or domesticated. Okay, now we move on to the agrarian and irrigation civilizations. Wherever ancient gathering, hunting, and peoples discovered how to grow and breed their food, populations swelled dramatically, which means they grew. The numbers just grew because they were healthy and strong. So people start making more babies. It's what happens, you know. Surplus wealth supported more complex societies, craft production, and trade appeared. People start having an abundance of things. They want other things. So no banking systems at the time, but people traded. New farming technologies evolved, such as the use of draft animals and irrigation. Irrigation is what we call today plumbing. Okay, so that evolved. Urban life or city life developed. Ruling elites emerged, which means now you started having kings and queens, right? Ruling elites. So, yeah, people started wanting to have power and maintain it. And the need to maintain records necessitated the invention of writing for some societies. They said, hey, we got to have writing here. In short, the most ancient civilization known to us arose or came about. As we shall see, each of these civilizations acquired and elaborated on its own unique characteristics and style of life. Yet, as distinctive as each of these earliest civilizations was to varying extents, they shared 8 attributes. Okay, 8 attributes. Together, these features comprise a type of civilization called agrarian civilization. As we study a few of the earliest civilizations, see how many of these features you can find in each one. Okay. So let's move on here. So now we're starting with some. Here we go. They were primarily rural societies or based in the countryside. Most people lived in country villages and had rural outlooks and ways of life. This does not mean that these civilizations had no cities, because they were socially complex, stratified, which means they had an upper, middle, and lower class. Cities were the locales where members of the ruling class, as well as priests, craftspeople, merchants, and nobles lived. Relationships between rural villages and cities were complex, but generally the city dwellers directed the productive activities of rural folk through their control of religious beliefs and rituals thought to be essential to fertility, or means either you're harvesting fertility or human and having babies fertility, through the enforcement of laws, customs, and traditions. Next step. They were based primarily on peasant agriculture and or livestock breeding. The overwhelming majority in such civilizations relied on farming and herding, which means you collect animals and keep them in a certain area, to sustain themselves and their families, as well as to support non-food producing members of society, such as craftsmen, merchants, and ruling elites. So look at that, non-food producing. So different from your farmers. They employed relatively simple technologies to perform their labors. They crafted their tools out of materials at hand: mud, clay, grasses, leather, wood, wattle, and stone. And that's why you see civilizations throughout the world. You go to Mexico, you go to places in Asia, and it's like, oh, the first things they cooked in was clay, you know. And I'll tell you what, in my opinion, it goes like this: clay to me is better than cooking in the stove. And then, it's much better than cooking stuff in microwave. The taste is unbelievable. Even coffee, right? Wind, water, human strength, or animals powered what simple machinery they fashioned, such as irrigation devices, like I said, plumbing and plows, which is what we had before we had these tractors that went through the fields of corn or what have you. So you had plows. They were animals. The rulers often skimmed off as taxes what surpluses they produced, keeping the people poor. That's not a good thing. Instead of sharing more of the money, they said, hey, we got to tax them more and then we can have more for ourselves. Most people maintain life in balance with their natural environment, which we're accused of modern people of not doing that. In civilizations that relied on simple technology, people's survival and ability to produce food hinge or settled on their understanding of the natural world. It was this ability acquired from many generations of observation and experiment that enabled them to work with what these surroundings provided them. So being able to survive in your natural environment was a big, big skill. And that's what helped you survive. Next point of the 8, right? Their religion was based heavily on gods and spirits that controlled their natural environment. Because the earliest civilizations relied or needed so much on agriculture, the ability of humans to control natural phenomenon was crucial to life. That's like weather. One way this was achieved was through an intimate understanding of the natural environment. But because total understanding and predictability were impossible, even now the weathermen make their stupid mistakes, right? Tomorrow is rain and it doesn't rain, and then the next day is sunny and then it rains. It's impossible to predict 100% something like the weather, nature is going to happen. But people came to believe that capricious gods, which means moody, stubborn gods and spirits, controlled natural forces, again, controlling the weather and nature. Frequently, people believed that these spirits could assume human and natural forms. Maybe that's possible. Who knows? I still haven't met a person that was a god that I know of. They didn't tell me. Their religion emphasized ritual, which means doing it very frequently, and sacrifice as a ways to control the deity. Sacrifice means killing people, like the Aztec people took out the hearts of certain people to the sun god. Because the gods and spirits could control nature, people thought they could control nature by controlling the spirits, right? I don't know about controlling, but like appeasing them, saying, hey, if we kill certain people or do things for you, like in Hawaii, they would throw young girls into the volcano for peace and harvest. Communal religions centered on complex rituals and sacrifices to the gods to win their cooperation in controlling rainfall, which is very important for your harvesting, river floods, safety, soil and animal fertility, birth, and even death. Okay, long step there, but time for some questions. Whiteboard, pencil. Question 7. Explain the diffusion theory. So we talked about that right before we got into the different points. Now on to question 8. Name some features of agrarian civilization. Let me extend this a little bit more. Okay. So the points I just talked about, name some. You make the decision. 1, 2, 3. It's up to you. I spoke right now. I covered 4 points, so I should give you enough. Let me give you a minute to write those down. Okay, let me move on to the eraser. Okay, again, repeating, explain the diffusion theory. It's not complicated. You can do it. A couple of steps. Name some features of agrarian civilization. Like I said, I just covered about 4 points. So put as many as you like. It's a practice for the midterm. All right, heading back to the material. And we ended here with the religion emphasized ritual and sacrifice ways to control deities or gods. And so let's complete the cycle here. They relied on religious specialists to communicate with the gods, meaning priests. The rituals and sacrifices on which so many people relied were complicated and had to be carried out with great precision to be effective. Only trained specialists, priests, priestesses, which means lady priests, spirit mediums, or people that communicated with ghosts, medicine men and women could perform them flawlessly, which means without mistake. They believed time to be cyclical or going in circle pattern. Farmers and animal pastoralists lived their lives according to the rhythms of nature. Consequently, they perceived the workings of time and the universe as occurring in endlessly repeating rounds of birth and death, death and renewal. That's the circle. Or if you remember in the Disney movie, The Circle of Life, The Lion King. Their social values emphasize kinship, which means family togetherness and even a larger group. And the clan, see, that's the clan. Another strategy employed as a hedge or a safety against natural disaster was to create wide social contacts amongst kin, fellow clanspeople, clients, and allies. These extensive groupings constituted networks of mutual rights and responsibilities as a form of social insurance. Okay, social insurance. It's an interesting term, right? Not your regular medical insurance, but social insurance that helped guarantee the survival of individual members. A corollary or a parallel to this was a veneration of elders, which means a respect for elders, seniors, and spirits of dead ancestors. That's why, like for American Indians, when they made a graveyard of their ancestors, you were not supposed to walk in there. You respected them. So several of the earliest civilizations in the world developed in the plains bordering on major rivers or in the valleys that rivers created. They depended on intensive, productive agriculture, and the development of agriculture depended in turn on the excellent soil and regular supply of water provided by the river. That's what I told you. If you found a good area like this, you stayed. In ancient Mesopotamia, the dual drainage of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers made possible the first urban civilization living by those rivers. In Egypt, the Nile, the world's longest river, at more than 4,000 miles, was the life-giving source, everything that people needed and cherished. At a slightly later date, the Niger River, nurtured the early development of agriculture and city life in West Africa. The earliest available evidence of the beginnings of Indian civilization is found in the extensive fields on both sides of the Indus River, which flows more than 2,000 miles from the slopes of the Himalayas to the ocean. In northern, and there's our guide map, okay, China, the valleys of the Yellow River, which is about 2,700 miles long, and the Yangtze River were the cradles of the oldest continuous civilization in world history. Worldview map 1.3, there it is, shows 4 of the above mentioned civilizations. Recent studies in the Western valleys of the Andes in Peru also show that an advanced ceramic making civilization, previously unsuspected, flourished in the 3rd millennium BCE. So we didn't even know about them, but they were flourishing, which means surviving at a really nice rate. What else did the rivers provide besides good crops and essential waters? They also offered a sure and generally easy form of transport. Yes, people made these early boats and transported food and goods, allowing inter-village trade and encouraging central, usually city-based authorities to extend their powers over a much greater area than would have been possible if they had only overland or land contacts. The interchange of goods and services between individuals or groups is a constant motivating force in human history as a strategy to avoid the catastrophic effects of crop failure, and they did have failures. So what are you going to do? Through the creation of supplementary forms of wealth. We shall look at this theme in differing contexts in later chapters. Moreover, it was trade as well as migration that provided the usual means by which early societies established and maintained connections with each other. Trade and other forms of human contact, such as migration and conquest, will be common themes throughout this text. So again, as we look at this, we're looking at the different animals and the different areas. So you have the Andes in Peru, and those are llamas, if you're not sure what a llama is. And then Northern America, which was famous for the turkey. Turkeys did not exist in what later was called Europe, or Asia did not have turkeys either. But yes, you can see originally what became America, and then North America, Mexico, there was no cattle, no cows. So that's why I made my comment earlier about Chihuahuas for protein. So again, water buffalo. Water buffalo was used in Asia as a tractor for the rice fields, right? So all different kinds of things, and then different vegetables and what have you. Corn, again, was from Northern America. Europe, what later became Europe, did not have corn. And we did not have rice in this area, so we had to get that from the east. Potatoes actually came from Peru. That's why it's a bag of potatoes here, not Ireland. People with the last couple hundred years identify potatoes with Ireland and the famine, but they originally came from Peru. Tomatoes originally came from Mexico, Aztec Indians. When the Spanish came, then they took some over to Europe. The first time the Pope of Rome saw a tomato and someone bite into it, he said it looked like blood, so he prohibited people from using tomatoes for, I'm not sure exact amount of time, but you have to think Italians are known for their tomato sauce, but this wasn't brought over until the late 1400s, maybe 1500s to Italy. So what were they eating before the tomato, right? Interesting stuff. Okay, back to question time here, I think, right? I don't want to miss any of these nice questions for you. Okay, yes, I do. Okay. Back to the whiteboard. Pencil. Question 9. Where did several early civilizations develop? And, I'm talking about location, as they say in business, location, location. Think on a micro level, not a macro level. Question 10. Why was this done? Meaning here, 10 is connected to 9. So once you identify the certain area where early civilizations developed, let me know why. Why did they choose this area? What was the important reason or reasons for this? I want to know. Please let me know. Okay, let me give you a few to answer those. Okay, these aren't long. Eraser time. Where did early civilizations develop? Location. What is the reason? Why was this done? Okay. Back to the material. Metal and its uses. Now we're going to get into metal, like I said. The first metal used by humans seemed to have been soft copper. When combined with lead and tin ore, copper becomes the most useful bronze, most useful. Bronze has some advantages over copper. It is harder and therefore more suitable for weaponry and more resistant to weathering, but it has several disadvantages when compared with other metals. It is relatively difficult to make. Its weight is excessive for many uses, and it cannot keep a fine edge for tools and cutting weapons. Above all, bronze was difficult to obtain in the ancient world. The period when bronze art objects and bronze weapons predominated in a given part of the world is called the Bronze Age. In Western Asia, where the earliest known civilizations appeared, the Bronze Age extended from about 7000 BCE to about 1500 BCE, when a major innovation in human technology, the smelting of iron, which means the heating. It's like a lava from a volcano. It's hot iron, which you can mold. The discovery of how to smelt and temper iron tools and weapons was a major turning point in the development of every people, ushering in an iron age. Okay. Iron has been the key metal of history. Wherever it has come into common use, certain advances have occurred. Iron plowshares opened areas to cultivation that previously could not be tilled or farmed. Iron weapons and body armor gave warfare a new look. Iron tools enabled new technical progress and expanded production. Iron utensils were cheaper than those of other metals, lasted longer, resisted fiery heat, and did not easily shatter or lose their edge. Now we're getting complex in our skills of what we need to survive, or what are better things for our survival. Iron ore is one of the more common metallic ores and is often found on or near the Earth's surface, unlike copper and lead. It is easily segregated from the surrounding soils or rock. The crucial breakthrough was learning how to temper the ore, that is, how to purify it, so that the iron could be formed and used without shattering, because a weak iron, you hit something with it and the blade shatters like glass. The Indo-European people known as the Hittites, who lived in modern Turkey, apparently were the first to smelt and temper iron by 1200 BC. This knowledge was spreading rapidly among Middle Eastern and Egyptian peoples. And that brings us to the end, my friends, the end of our reading for today. So let me move on to the last questions. Okay. Whiteboard. Pencil. Question 11. What was the first metal used by humans? Okay, let me stretch this out. Okay. And 12, our last question for today. What ushered in the Iron Age? I'm using the exact term that you can find in the book, which means that will make you find the answer if you don't remember. If I just put what brought in the Iron Age or what caused it, but I put ushered, and if you can find ushered, you will find the answer for Iron Age. So let me give you a minute to answer the final two, or at least write them down. Okay, let me hit that eraser. Repeating, what was the first metal used by humans? Please don't put aluminum or plastic. 12, what ushered in the Iron Age? Okay. All right, so back to the front here. Thank you for this first week. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned some things from the very beginning of human civilization, and I shall see you next week. Okay, so take care, everybody. Wear your masks. All right. Okay.